Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth session in the Administrator Forum series for the 2024-2025 school year. These sessions are a collaboration between the Early Childhood Development Department at the Illinois State Board of Education and Early Childhood Professional Learning, ECPL, a project of the Center, Resources for Teaching and Learning. I'm Kathy Villano, and I am one of the program managers at ECPL, and I'm happy to welcome all of you to this webinar this afternoon. ECPL will be sending out information about future sessions through email. We will also be posting information about future Administrator Forum sessions on our ECPL website. There is a special section on our website called the Workbench for Administrators. That page has information about upcoming professional learning and resources specific to your role. We would encourage you to visit it often. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Please be sure your name in the participant list is the same first and last name you used to register for this session. We need this for attendance purposes. If necessary, please edit your name to ensure that we're able to confirm your attendance today. Today's session will be recorded, and the recording will be posted on the ECPL YouTube channel within the upcoming week. Due to the large number of participants, your microphones will be muted throughout the session. However, the chat will remain open for your comments. Please remain in the session to hear important announcements at the end as well. And now, I would like to introduce Jenny Metcalf, a principal consultant in the Early Childhood Development Department at the Illinois State Board of Education.
Thanks, Kathy. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Before we start talking about our topic, I just wanted to give another plug. I know I'm a broken record, but our administrator conference registration is live on the ECPL website, March 31st and April 1st in Champaign. We would love to see every program have some representation at that conference. Again, it's geared towards administrators, so please, 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 if you haven't thought about attending, please consider registering as soon as possible. Now, today's topic I'm super excited about. I think it's one we haven't really had for in these sessions in a while. Tammy Natter and Maggie Gale are two of our early childhood coaches that work with PFA and PFAE programs, and they're here today to talk about strategies that you as administrators can use to create and strengthen your connections with your teachers, which will have a trickle-down effect, as the slide says, for teachers and children. And I just love this slide. I told them it's really calming. So I think this is going to be a good, energizing, and really important topic for all of you. So Tammy and Maggie, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome for joining us. We are going to be talking about the trickle-down effect, supporting teachers to be truly present with children. And I just have to say that is a mouthful of a title. And I do want to give props to Tammy because she is the brainchild behind all of our titles when we've worked together. But it does, I think, capture what we want to discuss today, which is really that idea of the trickle down effect when we are implementing practices and policies at a leadership level, how that can impact our staff, how that can impact teachers, and then ultimately the teacher or the children and families in our program.
And
oh, go ahead, Tammy.
sure. And I'm Tammy Natter, and some of the things you'll be seeing me do, another sideline I have is I am a yoga instructor for adults and children. And so some of those things are grounded in yoga practice. So I just wanted you to know that they had bearing.
Yes. I'm Maggie Gale, and you'll notice on the screen that we have our email addresses included. If at any time you have questions, we are going to be attempting to share resources throughout our time today. But if you miss a link or you need something from us, please don't hesitate to contact us. We like questions. And again, please feel free to post in the chat as we're talking. We're going to be monitoring that today, and we're hoping, I'm pretty sure we'll have some time at the end. We plan for a couple of minutes at the end for us to just answer any questions that you might have. This is probably, as Jenny mentioned, I am one of the coaches at ECPL, and this is probably about close. I don't know the exact date, but about 20 years in education. And most of that time has been in early childhood. I think for today's, probably all of us on here have worn a variety of hats during our careers, but probably most relevant for me as we were planning today was just my time as a preschool teacher. So really trying to keep that perspective as we planned, as we brought in just our ideas and strategies that we'd like to share with you today.
And Maggie, I'd like to add on to that. This is my 44th year in early childhood education, and I do agree with Maggie, those remembrance back to when I was a teacher and how it really framed the work we did on this presentation. All right, so we're going to get you started by letting you have some time to focus, settle in, and ground yourselves, because I'm sure your morning might have been really hectic. And so we'll start with a thing called ocean breath. So you want to relax your palms, maybe place your hands on your thighs or on your knees, and just allow yourself to relax. Have your upper body really nice and tall in your seat. Making that spine long can help with relaxation of the body. And ground your feet into the ground so you have that presence of stability within your body. If you're comfortable and you're able, feel free to close your eyes, because this will allow you to get some of the visual stimulation away from you and you can settle in more into your body. You want to soften your belly, and we'll take time to do an inhale through our nose, and it'll be a 4-count inhale. So let's begin. I'll count it out, and as I'm counting, you'll inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we'll exhale through the nose at a count of 6. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'd like you to stay here and try that process again. And if your eyes are open and you do prefer to look at the tide coming in, represents your inhale, and the tide going out represents your exhale. Let's do one more of those breaths so that we can get ourselves focused and settled. And inhale through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. A longer exhale through the nose. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hopefully that's helping you to begin to settle in to the content you'll be learning today. And this is just one example of something you could use at a staff meeting or an individual meeting of when you're meeting with colleagues, just to get settled in and focus to the content you may be discussing. And Maggie will move us forward.
Okay. Our learning intentions, our goals, our hopes, whatever you would like to call them for today, we have two ideas we really want to leave you with. One, that if you haven't already developed this connection for yourself between the trickle down effect, that's something that really feels cemented for you by our time today. And by the time our session is done today. And then the other thing that we would like to leave you with is a lot of different strategies. So Tammy and I talked about this, and there are things that you could use immediately. You can leave our meeting and you can go and run a staff meeting and use some of the ideas right away. And other things are going to require a little bit more planning, but we'd like to leave you with a variety. To get us started, we just want to start with some quick reminders, because whenever we're talking about social emotional learning, we want to remember that development is a highly interactive process. So children learn social skills just like everything that they learn through a process of modeling and practice with caregivers and adults. So children need caregivers to learn social skills and social emotional competence in their classrooms. They don't learn these skills in isolation, and they also don't come into our preschool classrooms already demonstrating these skills. But really the key, and this is probably the most important thing to remember as we're talking today, is that the key to effective social and emotional learning and teaching is emotionally regulated adults. We also want to remember that the earlier we provide support for developing social emotional competence, the easier the process will be. And it's not that it's impossible to learn these skills later on. It's just that it becomes much more difficult. And that's really what you see in the graph on the screen. This is from the Center on the Developing Child out of Harvard. And we're going to share this link with you during our presentation today if you want to do some more neuroscience reading. But what this graph is showing is on the far left where you see the younger ages, the blue line represents the brain's ability to change in response to experiences. And the orange line demonstrates the amount of effort such change requires. So as you can see, during the younger age groups, we have that greater flexibility and we have far less effort. And then somewhere close to around, it looks like around 30, those lines flip. So that amount of effort really increases and the amount of flexibility decreases. And then if you see on the side of the screen where it says it's easier and less costly to form strong brain circuits in the early years than it is to intervene or fix them later. So this is sort of what I always call the economic argument for high quality early childhood programs. We also want to remember that children are coming into our classrooms and programs with a wide variety of experiences, and not all of those are going to be positive experiences. So we might have children coming into our programs who have experienced one or more of the adverse childhood experiences, or the ACEs, as many of us have heard that term. And when we're thinking about the ACEs, this can include experiences and exposure to things like poverty or abuse or neglect or food instability or housing instability, a wide variety. And when we have this sustained exposure, this can lead to, as you can see over here, this can lead to what we call toxic stress. And I love this little graphic because this is a great reminder for us as adults working with children that this activation, as you can see here, of the stress response system can lead to long-lasting wear and tear on the body. And the effect would be similar to revving a car engine for days and weeks at a time. So just a quick little visual for us to remember. And when we're thinking about toxic stress and we're thinking about what that might look like with young children, that can come across in a variety of ways. It might look like anxiety, that might look like withdrawal, that can look like impulsivity, difficulty focusing. This can look like aggression or even regression of skills that were already learned. And there might be physical symptoms that might be present as well, like headaches or stomach ailments or insomnia. So a whole variety. And just before we switch to our next screen, I just want to make sure I share this link with you in the chat. So I'll give you the quick second. Sorry, Tammy.
No, that's okay. A link will be going into the chat for you.
Okay, there you go. So if anybody is interested in reading more about any of the research out of the Center for the Developing Child.
Now, a lot of you probably recognize this form of an eligibility checklist that you may or may not have used these specific things, but you've used a variety of them. And the most important thing on this document is that bottom sentence. Many of the factors listed could negatively affect a child's sense of safety and stability. The other thing we need to keep in mind is that our staff may have their own trauma or secondary trauma, which is also named as compassion fatigue. So hence why this webinar today is really important consideration. On the next slide, you'll see that we know that for the PFA requirements, that 80% of the children you have enrolled may have at least 2 risk factors. That's really high. And there has been some research too that sometimes some of our staff, they can have some of these risk factors at this percentage rate as well. So it's just a reminder, we have to always keep that in mind. But the next slide offers us hope. There's resilience. And this, we've been knowing this overall in our careers, that one relationship can truly make a difference to a child and can make truly a difference to an adult person. One really great, strong, supportive relationship. So we do know that teachers make a difference to children in the resilience mode. But you as leaders, in turn, make a difference for teachers as they're supporting their own teacher resilience. That's the trickle down effect.
Another way for us to help children to build resilience is through the process of co-regulation. And so on the screen, you'll see we have a little graphic here. When we think about regulation, there's a definition at the top. It says when we experience a balanced and steady state of internal energy, emotions, thoughts, and physiological processes. And you can think about this in phases. So in external regulation, this is what we think about with infants or even young toddlers, where they are reliant on another person to help regulate emotions. What we see at the preschool level, when we're thinking about children ages 3 to 5, this is where we really think about co-regulation, where we have where it says someone can find and maintain regulation with the support and assistance of an outside person. And then what our hope is ultimately is that the children in our programs develop self-regulation. So that's when someone can find and maintain regulation by themselves as a result of countless co-regulating experiences. And I think those are the key words here to really pick up: countless co-regulating experiences. And that is what we want to see in our preschool classrooms, that interactive process. So when adults are coaching, when they're offering feedback, when they're modeling and really building a relationship, and then intentionally creating spaces for children that feel safe and predictable. And after many of those experiences with caring adults, we can start to hope that children are building their social emotional competence and eventually self-regulation. Okay. And in order for this process to be successful, we really do need adults to be self-aware. So Tammy and I have used the term self-awareness. You also could say mindfulness. We prefer self-awareness, but it means the same thing, really. But when we're thinking about this idea of being self-aware, when you're thinking about some of those social emotional curricula you may be using in your programs, Pyramid has their the hot buttons activity. So a way for adults to think about their own thoughts and feelings about certain behaviors. Powerful interactions, when we're talking about self-awareness, they talk about the being present, ignoring static, and being attuned to the moment. So there's a lot of different ways to talk about the same concept. This is just a handy little graphic I like to pull out whenever we're talking about this topic. The top line is really, really what we hope we always see, where when we have adults who are engaging in that practice of self-awareness and they are managing successfully, managing their own emotions, we can say they're emotionally regulated and they're able to support children in managing their emotions. So that, again, that's the top line that we see on this graph. And then the first little scenario you see is you have a regulated adult, you have a regulated child, and that's going to result in a regulated child. The second situation is very common in a lot of our classrooms as well, where we have a regulated adult who's able to support a dysregulated child. And with the support of that caring adult, using those strategies like modeling, coaching, feedback, appropriate choices, things like that, that results in a regulated child. Consider these little yellow arrows like warnings. We don't want this situation on the bottom, either one of these. So this is when we have, you see little tornado cloud, funnel clouds there too. So when we have a dysregulated adult, that means that they are not successfully managing their emotions. They are not able to successfully help a dysregulated child regulate their emotions. So the end result is a dysregulated child. And then I think this scenario is the one that kind of makes me the saddest when I think about it, where we have a dysregulated adult and a regulated child, and the dysregulation in the adult can negatively impact the child's emotions, and that can result in a dysregulated child. Just going to give you a second to look at this video. I think for any of us who have taught in a classroom, we can relate to this picture. It says actual footage of a teacher trying to keep on top of their workload. And I think that it's very easy for us to sit here and say, oh yes, teachers need to be managing their emotional state. They need to be taking care of themselves. And it's much more difficult than I think it seems, because this can feel, this feels accurate to me when I think back to some of my classroom experiences, where just when you get a handle on your workload, a lot more expectations, demands kind of funnel your way as well. And so we do know that children in classrooms with emotionally supportive teachers and environments are less likely to exhibit problem behaviors, negative affect and aggression. But we also need to make sure that the teachers in those classrooms are being supported. And there's some really interesting research from, I have to apologize in advance because I don't know the correct pronunciation of this, but from the Social Emotional Teaching and Learning Lab from UIC, it goes by SETL. So I assume that it's SETL, but if that's not correct, I apologize. But the SETL lab out of UIC found that early childhood professionals experience higher than average workplace stress, that they experience higher than average depression and poor job satisfaction. And none of these things are a recipe for supporting adults' emotional regulation. But they also found, this is the positive side, that in programs that adopted more supports for social emotional learning, the teachers were less depressed, they were more satisfied with their jobs, and they felt more supported in managing challenging behavior and viewed the workplace climate overall more positively. So you can surmise that when the social emotional learning, when that was prioritized at the leadership level, that staff members benefited, as did the children in their programs. And this is some additional research out of their center as well, and I think really pertains to our audience today. So Catherine Zinzer, Timothy Kirby suggest the research by them suggests a relationship between a director's job satisfaction. So how much you enjoy your work, the belief that one is making a difference, commitment to early childhood education, all of those types of thoughts that when a director had high job satisfaction, that the emotional support teachers provided children was higher. So I'm going to, in the chat, as I'm switching to the next slide, I will make sure to include that research. It's very, very interesting out of UIC.
Now, as you're in this webinar with us today, you're probably saying to yourself right about now, I've been sitting too long, and we agree. So I'm going to stand up and you can join me as well, teaching you some breathing strategies you can incorporate in a staff meeting. And as we're doing them, you're going to think, these feel kind of silly, but silliness and humor is so important in our work. It relieves a lot of stress. And in this too, then the teachers can teach these to young children. We're inhaling and exhaling and just releasing. So I'm going to stand up and do some. And sometimes it helps you if you stand up and do things with me, then you get that brain, mind, muscle connection. So the first one up here is called balloon breath. And so you just pretend you're a balloon that's being filled up with air. So just have your hands near your belly area and you inhale and you breathe in and your hands expand out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we'll exhale. Think about what a balloon looks like when air is being let out and let yourself be dramatic. Exhale. And sound effects are everything, even in staff meetings. So you're going to hear a lot of my sound effects. Now, this next one is called lion's breath. This is a real yoga breath. Now, you'll have to pardon my face because it's truly how this breath looks. And it's very popular in yoga books and in children's literature too that talks about yoga. So I'm going to come down a little bit and I'm going to get my lion's mane ready. And I'm going to inhale. And now I'm going to exhale and bug my tongue out and my eyes. I know that wasn't very attractive, but that is truly how that breath works. The next breath is dragon breath. So the children or the adults, they have their dragon wings. So you get your dragon wings in, you inhale. And when you exhale, you breathe out your fire. Now that's a really great exhale, relieving a lot of stress and anxiety. Another one is snake. So this is where you can get your large motor skills really going with the staff. And you just come on down and you kind of slither up like a snake. So we'll go down, we'll inhale. And here comes our exhale. Remember, humor is important. Another one to try is cat. And when I do this in person with people, we always use it as a stress reliever. We all know you're going to have bad days at work. Colleagues don't always get along because we're human. And it's just that acceptance of that. But maybe you need to close your door and go in your office and you bring up your paws like a cat, inhale, and then exhale and go. You might just need a little hissing there just to let yourself vent. Again, the humor, the importance of humor. Volcanoes, very fun. And remember, sound effects are everything. So you can get a little exercise in here. You squat down because the lava is way down there. We're going to inhale, bring up the lava. This one's very nice because if you're thinking to yourself, those are pretty silly, Tammy, I don't know if I'll do those at staff meetings. Maybe you'd like this better. It's your left hand or your right hand, and the Other hand, so it looks like that, sandwiched on top. I'm going to interlock my fingers. So here I am opening my elbows in a straight line. I'm going to inhale. And then as I exhale, I'm going to pull against my fingers. One more time, in case you need to do that for yourself. Inhale. Exhale, pull apart. Now, what you're going to feel, you'll feel that release, but you will feel a little stress and strengthening in the back of your shoulders. Really important to feel that in the top part of your spine, the thoracic spine, to keep you nice and tall. Another one that's really great, you could call this orange juice or sponge. When I use it as thinking about a sponge, I think about a wet sponge. So imagine you have a wet sponge in your hand. It's just overflowing with some water. You're going to lift that up tall with your inhale. And then you're squeezing the sponge and you exhale it down. Do the other side because we want you to be even. Left hand, nice, good, wet sponge. Inhale up tall, lift it up. Exhale. So that's a great one. This is called the worry ball. This also may feel really good to do at a staff meeting. There's some of you, I might call on some of you that I know on this webinar because I can see names. Nothing to be stressful about because it's a worry ball. So how the worry ball works is it could be an air ball, or you could have a very soft ball that you could toss around, whenever the break is and important messages for your staff. So what I'm going to do is I got my worry ball. Now you're with us right now, and you should be staying focused with us and being present. So right now I have a worry. There's nothing I can do about it. But one of my worries right now is I do have to go pick up my car later. I do know what the repair fees are. I'm just hoping it gets done in time. So that is a worry for me because I do have evening fitness classes to take care of tonight. So I'm going to throw my worry ball. Linda Albrecht, you better be ready. I'm throwing it to you. Catch it, Linda. Did you catch it? Okay, Linda, you got to off mic and tell us what your worry is.
I'm worried right now about I have to get the kids back from the bus, all home, buses back, and still pick up my own son in a very short amount of time.
Oh gosh, that is a lot. Now, Linda, do you know anybody else's name on there that you might want to throw the worry ball to? If not, you could throw it to Maggie.
I'm not seeing anyone I know.
Okay, throw it. Feel free to throw it to Maggie.
Okay, Maggie. There you go.
Thank you, Linda. Maggie, do you have a worry today? And then you could throw it back to me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was trying to get off mute and there was something blocking. I wanted to say I didn't want to interrupt you, Tammy, but I stopped screen sharing so that people could see you doing all of the different breathing techniques. And so if you haven't done this already, you can switch to presenter view so that you can see Tammy as she's talking. But my worry is a little similar. It's all about like my kids managing all the pickup drop off activities today. So it's like a lot of different things happening all day today.
And then
So,
you could throw the worry ball back to me when you're ready.
okay, here you go.
All right. Whoa, that was a good toss. I caught it. Nothing we can do about our worry. We're in our staff meeting. We need to stay focused. So I'm going to open the door of the office or the room and I'm throwing it out the hallway. There you go. That's the concept of the worry ball. Now, on our next slide, you may all want to get up and do this. Now, this one's a little bit more for those of you that are feeling, I don't want to get that humorous with all those animals and breathing, but I don't mind doing this. Maybe you want to do this with some of your staff. It's the 5 movements of the spine. So I would really recommend, if any of you can, to stand up and do this because you'll feel really good after. So the first thing we'll do is a nice inhale up towards the ceiling, arms nice and stretched. Inhale, you're lengthening your spine. Give it that nice length it deserves. The next thing, you could either use your desk table, or you could go as far as you want to your thighs or shins. We're going to exhale down into a forward fold. Some of you will stop at your desk. Some of you will stop at your thighs or your shins, or some of you will go to your feet. And then we're going to take another big inhale up. Lengthening again, but now you're looking at your thumbs. And believe it or not, our spines were meant to do back bends. So you're just going to push your hands back like you're a giant cactus or goalpost and squeeze your shoulder blades together. And I'm going to turn this way so you can see that I'm bending my back. There you go. Next, inhale up. Interlock your hands and fingers. Your arms, bicep muscles are close to your ears. And a nice tall stretch, and you'll inhale up. Go ahead and exhale as you go towards your right side. This is you laterally moving. Unfortunately, during the day, we don't have lots of times to laterally move. And you're opening up your left lung. Inhale back up. Go to the other side. There we go. And we're allowing space for our right lung. And the last one to do that might feel the best is put your hands on your shoulders. You want to keep your hips forward. Imagine that each hip is like a headlight of a car. So you want to stay forward. And if you know per your doctor or physical therapist that you are allowed to do spinal rotation, you could join me. So we're just going to move from side to side, offering your spine some rotation there. Okay. Now you have a choice here. You could either stay standing and join me on the next slide, or you could be seated. But I'm hoping that that past slide with the lengthening and all that with the spine was really helpful to get you through the rest of your day. This slide, these are just fun other little things that you can do just to make things lively in a meeting. And I always like to make pretend smoothies. So we are just going to be a blender, and we take our top off, which is at our head, and make a sound effect. So it'd be popping off the blender lid. And now if we were a smaller group, I'd get some suggestions from the group. But right now, I'm just going to throw a bunch of things in for our smoothie. Bananas, blueberries, kale, spinach, almond milk, mangoes, everything you can think of. Put the lid back on, close it, and then hands back on here. And we do that same rotation of the spine. And sound effects. Shh. Because all the ingredients are mixing. Shh. Pull that lid off. Now you've magically become your own person, and you're going to drink your big smoothie, and it's a big one. Sound effects are always welcome. Drink it up. Gulp, gulp, gulp. This is the one of the best smoothies I've ever made. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Oh, and I'm rubbing my abdominal area because that sure was good. So that's a fun one. This is called Beat the Drum, number 2. Beat the drum is really a Tai Chi move, very similar to rotation of the spine. And the Tai Chi beat the drum, you need a lot of space around you. So I'll move a little more graciously just because I have these walls right here. But you want space so that you don't injure your hand on a desk or on another person. But you just really swing your arms. And you can bring the arms up to opposite corner of your shoulder. And it really just gets the spine working. It gets your nervous system settled and invigorated. And I do know from master Tai Chi teachers that I've worked with that in China, if you see this move begin, they're ready to do a Tai Chi session. All right. So I hope some of those, before I stop this slide though, I think it's very important. If you look underneath the very fancy smile, Maggie will just mention a few words about the book that's listed there.
Thank you, Tammy. And I like that I'm going to be recorded forever as a headless going, going along with all your moves today. So the book on the bottom is called Catch a Breath. We just wanted to mention some of your teachers may have already received a copy if they're part of the coaching program. And if any of you have attended other ECPL sessions, sometimes this book gets passed out as well. Catch a Breath was a series that I did with another one of our coaches, Yvonne Music, a couple of years ago. And I want to say it was probably it could have been 3 years ago. And the series was for teachers. And it was focused on helping teachers come up to emotionally regulate, stay well balanced because their jobs are very challenging and stressful. And this book was part of the workshop. This is what we gave them at the end. And it has a number of exercises in it. One side is designed for adults. So practices that are not quite the same as some that Tammy shared today, but a few are similar. And then on the other side, there is a child version of the same exercise. So the idea was that you could practice for yourself some of these either on your own or with other people, and then the child versions you could use in your classroom. And we did get really good feedback from people, and they really were trying some of the exercises out with their students, and they were pretty happy with like how they were received. But if you are interested in a copy of the book, I do have extras, so just feel free to email me. I could find a way to get it to you, or at least scan it or something like that. So I just wanted to share that because this is another great resource for supporting our teachers and staff.
Hey, these are simple strategies and other good reminders. The adage of that multitasking works really effectively might not be necessarily true. So you want to take time, just do one thing at a time, slow down. You want to begin different activities such as driving or speaking at your own staff meeting or helping a colleague by breathing. Take one gentle inhale and followed by a calming exhale. Remember, we know this. Inhales give you energy, exhales calm you down. You want to take time to cultivate gratitude. I like to do this for myself when at the end of the day, I like to write 2 things down in a book about my day and what went really well. And then it's also great. I need to work on this second part, is to say it out loud to somebody, because then it makes it even more present. And this was a great idea Maggie mentioned, and we want to be sure to bring it up. And some of you may already do this, but maybe you want to do a whole program brain break over your intercoms within your sites or schools. 1 minute to get everyone to pause or be present.
Yes. And unfortunately, I do not remember who shared this idea with me, but I do know it is happening in some of the programs across the state. And I think even if it's not a minute, even if it's 30 seconds, because sometimes a minute can feel very long. So it really, whatever makes sense for your program and the age group.
All right. We want to take a moment to settle in and just see how you're feeling right now. So first thing in your head, or write it down, think of one emotion word that describes how you might be feeling right now. You're going to either have that in your head, you'll type it in the chat, but you won't press send yet. And this goes back to a great activity Dr. Antoinette Taylor has done in webinars that are virtual. But her and I used to also do this in face-to-face trainings with body movements. So get that emotion word in your mind and begin to type it in the chat, but don't send it yet. I'll count to 3 and then we'll have a waterfall. And don't worry, Janice, oopses are welcome here. We love oopses. So everybody ready? 1, 2, 3, send. Oh, look at
Oh,
oh wow. There harried was in there, calm, intrigued, tired,
yes.
calm, overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed,
Robin, it's gonna be
cold,
okay. Breathe.
cold. I'm cold too. I totally can relate to that
Yeah.
one.
Oh, look at all these. Oh, these are great. Cold, yes. Yes, great. Thank you for doing that waterfall and having the check-in with us. Another great activity to share with staff, a check-in.
This is the best I've seen the waterfall chat work. So
Ooh.
thank you. Thank you, everybody. Usually everyone puts their answers in too quick. Okay, just moving ahead. This is another strategy that you can adapt for however it fits within your program. Just the idea of journaling. And it definitely relates if you wanted to use a prompt like Tammy just did with the waterfall chat, like how are you feeling right now? What's an emotion word that you're feeling? And journaling can be done whether you're running a meeting in person or through Zoom, a virtual meeting. Um, you, honestly, just like that idea of the brain break, just dedicating 1 minute, 2 minutes, probably not much more than that for the beginning to start your meeting. It's just a way to help reinforce this practice of self-awareness. And some of the benefits I have them on 2 screens. There's so many benefits. We had to put them onto 2 screens. So I will share the resources or the reference with you so that if you want to read more about the benefits of journaling in all of your free time, you can. But this is coming from an organization in the UK called Prosper, and their work is with postdoc students. So they have all of these resources for, I guess, emotional regulation and controlling all their stress. And this is one of the big suggestions that they give. So when you do use journaling as a way to practice self-awareness, it can help reduce your stress. It can help improve overall well-being. And then you'll also see that improved emotional regulation in that second bullet, and also increase mindfulness. Oh, did it switch? Nope. Okay. It can also help with memory and also better problem solving skills. So again, if this is something that this might be a little bit more comfortable. Like I like to, every time Tammy and I have done this, this is our third time doing this presentation together, I think. And every time she talks about the cat breaths, I like to imagine everybody going back to their staff meeting and doing that with their groups. But if that is not your comfort level, then a journaling as a way just to help people get into their comfort zone and into the mindset before the meeting. This is a strategy that might be a little bit more comfortable. And then another benefit of this is that this is another strategy that can be modeled for adults that can be used with children in the classroom, because we do have so many teachers that are already using journaling regularly. And instead of maybe giving an open prompt or no prompts or something else, you can use more of like a social emotional focus, whether that's draw your feelings, write about how you're feeling today, however you want to phrase it, or your teachers want to phrase it. And the same can be said for the adults. If this is something that you do want to use, they don't have to actually write. They could draw, they could scribble, they could do whatever makes them feel comfortable. And unlike us, you don't have to ask them to share. So we asked you to share in the waterfall, but it can be something that's kept private if that's more comfortable for everybody. Oh, okay. Another strategy. So far up until this point, I think all of our strategies have been really simple things. You could use them immediately, things you can adapt without a lot of practice. This is where we're going to make that switch to some of the strategies that are going to require a little bit more planning. But this is one of my favorites. And I really, really hope that I would love to hear, honestly, if any of you are already doing this. This idea here is creating an adult cozy corner. So very much in line with what we think about for preschool classrooms and the Eckers 3 and creating cozy nooks for our students. This is creating a little space in your program somewhere for adults to have a space to kind of escape, just take a couple of minutes to recharge. So I think a lot of the examples here, oh, I'm seeing in the chat, we have so many people on here who already have one.
Oh, yay.
Yay. We might contact you afterwards for details. I would love to hear more, but, or feel free to unmute if you can, or add details in the chat. But some of the ideas that we've heard from other people are creating spaces that really are, you're just thinking about the space overall. When you walk in, what's the lighting like? Is there comfortable seating? Do you have things like spa music or a white noise machine? If you can use an essential oil diffuser, sometimes that can be a nice addition. I always laugh to myself about this one here, the tea and coffee machine, because I think for me, that's all I would need. Like you could give me an empty closet and put like a Keurig in there and I'd be like, this is great. But for, thinking about the whole space overall. And then also just keeping in mind that this would be something that's designed for maybe 1-2 people max. And that it's not a social space, it's really a place to recharge. And before we move on, I just kind of want to look through the chat. Tammy, I don't know if you have the chat open too.
I do see it. Monique is trying to figure out how to do space. A lot of people before that mentioned it. Amy's talking about that. Hers is small, but that's okay. She's got low lighting, comfy chairs. Monique just needs help, and Monique, hopefully the ideas that other people are bringing up will help spur you on about where you might put it.
Yes. And I'm seeing that Sarah is saying that theirs doubles as a space for families, which I think is
Yes.
really, really great. Yes, we're going to have to read through this later. But thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, everyone,
Yes.
please read these because it'll probably give you extra helps and thoughts on how you could create
Yes,
this for your spaces.
absolutely. Okay. And then this is really along the same lines. It's just really being intentional about setting the space, setting the tone, setting the environment very intentionally for your meetings. And so this can be, we have supervision meetings, but it doesn't have to be, it could be any kind of meeting that you're leading with your staff. And I'm thinking like smaller groups or one-on-one, but I guess it could be all different varieties. Thinking about the space again, like what kind of messages are being shared as people come in? Is it comfortable? Is it quiet? What is the lighting like? What sound, what smells do people experience when they come in? I am somebody I've discovered very sensitive to lighting. Like I really, really don't like those like LED blue lights. It's like very industrial and harsh. I'm somebody when it's like a nice warm light, I'm like, oh, this is great. So I think that there's a lot of people like that too. Um, another idea is to think about how you can bring in nature. So this again kind of connects to that Eckers 3 idea of like, do you have a plant or do you have windows? Do you have small fountain, other items that really kind of help people feel more comfortable and at ease? This idea of starting with a pause. I think Tammy talked about this a little bit earlier. This is also related to that brain break idea or even the journaling. The pause doesn't have to be a literal pause. It could be like a journaling pause or some other, strategy or technique that's comfortable for you. I would love to hear if anyone ever decides to start with cat breath. You will have to let us know. Is that what it's called, Tammy? Am I calling it right?
Yeah,
Cat
yes,
breath?
it is.
Yes,
And
it's like hissy.
I have another version of it too.
Yeah, but when we say a pause, it can be a pause. It can like, I think this for a lot of people, and I have done this with coaching sometimes where just if just to get the right headspace, get everybody like in the moment, just having people turn off their cameras, just sit quietly for 30 seconds or turn off cameras and jot down some notes about how they're feeling. And they don't share it, but they could if they wanted to. And it's just a way to kind of help us get into the mindset before the meeting. And then the last idea on here is actually a powerful interactions strategy. And it's something that I'd say is again, one of those strategies that you can model for your staff members, and then they're going to implement in their classrooms. And that's just that idea that remembering to match our tone, our voice, our interaction style to the other adult. And I think we've all had those experiences where we're sort of, there's a mismatch where somebody's like very, very high energy and loud and the other person might not be, and that could be a little uncomfortable. So that can be uncomfortable for adults but also for children as well. So just being really aware of like how we're coming across and then adjusting just to make it a more comfortable experience.
Okay. And here is some more strategies that require some planning. These are actual things I used to do with my staff. Sometimes I would conduct walking meetings, and the walking meetings can be done indoors or outdoors. It's always nice once the weather in Illinois begins to break into that springness. It's always fun to do the walking outdoors. But it just keeps people active and their brains are thinking and moving and they're not just sitting. And so I really like doing it, and ideas would spur more and more conversation would spur. Another idea is to go near a nearby garden or park for your meeting. I do want to tell you, this is a strategy I really use with my college students. Once the weather's presentable, and if I'm teaching a college course, I will try to have one of their lessons outside. Makes something about being outdoors and nature makes such a difference for people's perspectives, for our own perspective leading it, and for trickling it down to our staff members. And again, those teachers will trickle down that joy of nature to the children. Maggie already brought this up, but it's always worth repeating and repeating again. When we bring nature into our indoor environments, there's just something about it that really has a calming effect or a calming, energizing effect. So having plants available, maybe you're really good at small fish tanks or aquariums, and just natural items that have that natural texture, like a driftwood or a shell or a rock, things that we see in nature, but just by looking at them, we see the fabulous texture. And oh, I do want to say, I think it was Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. I'm glad you love that cat breath. Okay. And there we go, moving us on. So this was so interesting as Maggie and I were planning it the very first time we ever did this. I was telling her, because the first time was in the spring. And if you recall spring, everybody was talking about cicadas. And I was listening to teachers talk about cicadas and their concern or their joy of seeing a cicada or their fear of seeing a cicada. It made me think of however they were thinking about cicadas, were they trickling that down to the children? And so it made me think of timely topics. Cicadas was a really big topic, and as a leader, you could have had those conversations with your staff if they were concerned about outdoor areas. So we were thinking, how do you continue to keep this timely? Well, one thing we know that recently happened was, I don't know if you could get away from any kind of media and not hear about the California fires. And thinking of yourself as a leader, that could have very much affected you. You possibly could have had friends and family that were truly affected by it. And then that could have trickled down to your staff that could have been affected by it. And then that trickles down to the children. So when we think about these different topics, taking mind of what might be causing stress for yourselves, your teachers, and the children, and how can we reflect or plan for these lessons and help this stress of these things become more manageable? And how can you make it happen? Because these timely topics will continue to come forward. So, but that the whole cicada thing really brought this to our forefront as Maggie and I were thinking. And then Maggie will move us forward. There we go.
Yes, here we are. Okay, so we've mentioned this a couple of times, but when we talked about this topic in the past, we did it in person. And so this next part we'd like to share with you is not only sharing the strategy, but we also want to share the content, because what we did this, I think this is another one of Tammy's wording. So think about a walkabout activity. So what we did was a walkabout activity. And for those of you, this was something that was a little bit newer for me. So I will explain it for those of you who have not done it. But what we did in our room is that we had chart paper questions that were posted around the classroom. We everybody at their tables had post-it notes. We posed the questions. We encouraged everybody. Actually, you can see the directions. Those are the exact directions we shared with the participants, the chart paper examples on the right. And we encouraged everybody to talk and then go around and respond with their post-its. And then they had the opportunity to kind of go around, take pictures, take notes about some of the strategies that they liked. And then we were able to bring everybody back together and talk about it. And so the strategy that's ideal for an in-person meeting. It's a great way to get people's brainstorming ideas or just collaboration. But it can also be used for Zoom, like a Zoom or virtual setting as well. And I don't know if we mentioned Padlet, but Padlet is a great way to do the same type of activity. There's also a newer platform called Idea Boards that Tammy has used, but I have not. So I don't know if any of you have used it too. But the Padlet or Idea Boards, you could use the same concept to just adjust it for your group. We did think about doing it today. We just thought, given the number of people, it might be a little bit difficult. So this is the content from our in-person sessions. I know it does. So what we ended up doing, because there was a lot of responses, we did kind of put them together, simplify them, and rephrase them. So you are getting like the big ideas from what we posed. But these are hopefully some ideas, additional ideas that came directly from the field, from some of your peers and colleagues that can help inspire some other ideas for you as well. So our first question, I think it was probably much wordier than this originally, but we'd asked our participants how they planned for staff self-awareness. So some of, like, in addition to the strategies that we had shared, we asked, well, what else are you doing, or what do you want to do? And so these were some of the responses we received. So many of the participants were providing opportunities for reflective supervision and using techniques and questions to support reflection. So they were being very intentional about using phrases like, oh, I notice, or I wonder. And so something that a lot of people were already doing, and an idea for you if you're not. This one I love, just the idea of like, remember it, because you probably are doing this far more often than you even realize, but intentionally acknowledging and validating staff members' feelings. So exactly what we would do when we're working with children, and then providing safe space to discuss feelings without repercussions. A lot of the programs were also engaging in goal setting and developing a shared vision for the program. So just giving people lots of opportunities to collaborate and share their ideas and participate in individual, but also sort of like a program wide goal setting experience. Next one, we can't do it enough. I think celebrating the positives with staff members. So we can sometimes get so caught up in the big picture, the feeling of getting overwhelmed, that we lose sight of all of the wonderful things that are already happening. And this is just a good reminder for us as well about remembering to celebrate your wins when you have them, because you probably have more than you even realize. And then using the last idea on here were very specific resources that a lot of the leaders throughout the state were using with their staff members to support self-awareness. So the two big ones that were mentioned was Onward, the book by Elena Aguilar, and the second, The Relationship Between Reflective Supervision and Burnout 0 to 3. I have to say that the Onward book, after we presented and somebody introduced me to it, I went and got it, and I do love it. And I could see how it could be used, really quick little exercises, questions to post to your staff. I think it is designed for individual use, but you can adapt it for a group. The second question that we posed to the participants was how they are planning for relationships in their programs. So this is relationships between staff members, how they're bringing people together. And most people were doing something around the idea of regularly scheduled meetings, and that often included food and drinks. And some of them were designed as coffee socials or First Fridays, potluck parties. So cute little names to go along with it. But a lot of these meetings were meetings, but they also had like that food and drinks component to it. There were many programs that were doing some sort of meet the team type of activity. So this could be something that like online, like a newsletter that's shared where you're highlighting one person at a time, or something more like physical in a building where they had a bulletin board dedicated to that person. Many of the participants were also starting with like lighthearted, silly kind of icebreaker games. And so there were ideas like the would you rather questions or tabletop questions and things like that. And I will say the would you rather game is great for this. And this is something that I have done in a couple of sessions I've done with teachers. What I love about it is that you can model another strategy. Again, the would you rather game are the silly kinds of questions. Would you rather Tammy, give me an idea. I can't think of one on
Oh.
the spot.
Would you rather go ice skating or skiing?
Yes, and they could even be like more like even like silly range. So you can adapt it for whoever your audience is, but it's an idea to share with teachers and paraprofessionals if you're trying to encourage more conversation during snack time or meal times in the classroom. So it's kind of giving people a little guide like, okay, if you're not comfortable just engaging in conversation, here's a little bit of a structured type of questioning activity. So it's another one of those like parallel process types of things. Like you can model for staff and then they can engage with their students in a similar format. The next one, oh, it kind of made me laugh. A lot of participants were planning events outside of work that promoted collaboration. So these are not meetings. These are just extra things to encourage the collaboration on the staff. And so some of the ideas were top golf, bowling, and axe throwing. And I love this idea of the axe throwing. I've never done that. It sounds fun. And then the last idea was something along the lines of name that staff member, which I think you could do in a variety of ways. One of the ways that Tammy and I discussed before today is asking your staff members to give you like maybe 3 to 5 little statements or facts about yourself. And then having people guess who it is. So you have like one person that this would be like maybe over time throughout the year. Like one week you are highlighting this staff member and people have to guess who it is. So just kind of a way to, again, build up those relationships between the people on your team.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, you can imagine the challenges you face. We had a lot of Post-its, but what we did is we consolidated, they seem to boil down to 4 major themes. The first theme is staff needed a place where they could feel safe to really share their struggles and not have it be used as an evaluation tool of themselves, but just a space holder where they could say, I'm really struggling right now, and know that they could get other ideas from their leader or from other colleagues. Perspective was a big one. Sometimes if we look at things through other people's lenses, sometimes I call this perspectacles, that you put on someone else's viewpoint and see what that looks like. And this came up earlier. Remember that some of our staff are experiencing compassion fatigue and different things, and they may need a little help and support as they try to set boundaries for themselves. And a lot of you are dealing with staff that are on multiple sites. So some of the little tricks we brought up about doing some of those things over internet, like using a Padlet and doing this kind of thing. A lot of people brought up they use Survey Monkeys or all those electronic surveys, but different ways to keep people connected. What was wonderful too, of course, many people were being proactive and thinking of solutions. It already got brought up about the cozy area for adults. Remember, start with doing little things. Sometimes teachers just, when you bring them a piece of chocolate at the end of the day, they're just like, woo, that just makes a difference in itself. And do strategies learned at every meeting so it becomes a habit. So if you're doing something interesting to bring people together at a staff meeting, it just becomes part of your process, the habit of the meeting. And I love this statement that one person wrote, and I just love the series of it. Protected time, team building, reflected supervision. That feels like the pathway. And you have to plan for things. Sometimes we have to wing some things, but really planning to be intentional of how we can let staff feel supported, and then they can trickle it down to children. We do have to plan for it. And maybe sometimes you want to have a staff member, or they take turns being in charge of or leading the activity. And those were just hopefully some extra additions to what you can add to your toolkit. And Maggie will move us forward. And Lynn did say, I've done what is one thing nobody knows about you. Great, Lynn. Now, we have just 1 or 2 slides about this. And here's some things that I've really come to learn about our work and even work in other occupations. The bottom line, nothing gets done without relationships. And one component of relationship is building, you've got to build deep listening skills. And so here, you've heard us bring up Elena Aguilar today. This was one of her most recent books, Arise. And something that struck me out of this book was just considering the common obstacles to deep listening. And I know for myself, and maybe some of you feel this way, I feel like my listening, I need to always work and think about it and improve upon it. And these were 5 statements to really think about. Some of our obstacles, we are distracted because a lot's coming at you as leaders. We've been conditioned to prioritize intellect and efficiency. Maybe sometimes it's nice to prioritize relationship and idea growing. We think we don't have time, but if you really look at a minute and you make yourself not do anything for a minute, you see how long a minute really can be. We've got an agenda, so we kind of maybe need to think about, is our agenda encompassing lots of thoughts and perspectives? And we have to really work. It's hard because when you're leading, sometimes you don't always have someone right there, and you may have to go to another leader or colleague, but working on not letting our emotions get in the way. And then Maggie will move us forward.
Okay, and these are just some questions that were posed in the book that support the practice of deep listening, and a lot of them are coaching style questions. So you might already be using them or some variation, but if you haven't, these are some ideas just to get you started. The first is, what would be most useful for us to talk about today? So this is really putting the ball in the other person's court, letting them bring up topics that they want to discuss with you. The second says, that sounds really difficult. Do you want to talk more about that? Again, this idea of acknowledging feelings when we're meeting with our teams. And then what are some other ways that you could interpret that situation? So getting back to the idea from the chart about helping people gain perspective, and how did that make you feel? And I have a feeling we could unpack this situation and get more understanding of what's going on. So again, kind of laying the groundwork for maybe a continuation of that discussion. And I'm sure many of you have a lot of other questions that you would add to this list as well. And if you want to, feel free to do it in the chat.
Now, before we get to any maybe questions you want to ask or any comments you want to put in the chat, any extra, let's do one activity just to close you out. And how about just, you could be seated, standing, a nice big inhale up, interlocking your fingers together, And you're going to bring your hands down to the base of your skull. Let your head just rest in your hands. Now push open your elbows really wide, and you're going to feel the strength in the upper part of your between your shoulder blades and the thoracic spine. Just squeeze that and just allow your shoulders to become big and broad because of all the work you carry. And just exhale and relax. And now, as we're near the closing, it's about 2:20, and we want to make sure to offer time that you could say anything in the chat you would like. A lot of you have been sharing great strategies. Lynn was bringing up about the psychological safety for staff. Jana, thank you. I'm glad. I hope that Maggie and I were able to present some strategies that could be useful right this week or even planned for. And I'm going to be quiet. So if anyone needed to come off mute to ask a question or raise their hand, we're here for you.
Okay. And I just wanted to say there were a couple people, I will make sure to go through the chat. I know a couple of you messaged me about a copy of the book, and I will find a way to get it to you.
And I just want to say we hear you on your comment in the chat.